Welcome to Pilates is the Answer podcast, where you can discover the power of Pilates and how it can improve every aspect of your life. We are your hosts, Stacey Jernigan
and Pearl Dahmen, and we look forward to introducing and sharing all of the questions about which Pilates is the answer.
Welcome back, Pilates is the Answer podcast family. Pearl and I are excited to have you with us today. So, Pearl, I haven't really gotten a chance to talk to you yet about my interview with my Pilates mentor and friend, Julie Turner. I want to hear your feedback about her.
Oh man, I can understand why she was your mentor and why you look up to her. She is really dynamic. I loved hearing her story, her background, but I think what I loved the most was hearing how she is using movement for healing, not just for herself, but how she's learned and figured out how to take that out into others, and not just in one area. I mean, the fact that she works with the breast cancer women, and she also works with women in shelters. That's just so exciting. I want to look into some of the things that she's doing. I mean, the Pink Ribbon program, not only for us, but I would encourage our listeners, if they want to give back and use their Pilates in a helpful way, I'm sure that there is something in their area that could do that. But you know, what's really interesting after listening to your interview with Julie, what I didn't realize is how much Parkinson's not only was in her life, but how Pilates helped her go through that process and healing, not just for herself. I am excited for our listeners to hear my interview with Susan Lerman.
I know, I'm excited too. I think we have some really great guests right now that we're interviewing. So it's an exciting time for us. So let's get into that interview.
Terrific. Susan, why don't you start just for a moment, give us a little background before you got into Pilates.
Well, thank you, Pearl. It's my pleasure to talk to you today. You're right. We have been actually pretty close friends for the last 6 years. What you probably don't know about me is that I am originally a Bostonian, and I spent 25 years in health and human services as a program administrator for the states of Massachusetts and Florida. And I was a foster parent for 15 teenage females over the course of time because, as you know, I'm a little nuts. And then I was recruited into the computer industry to develop information systems for child welfare and human services. So I spent the next 25 years traveling across the country building child welfare information systems. So
Wow.
I've sort of done both ends of the spectrum, which is kind of interesting. As far as Pilates is concerned, it all started about 15 years ago when Ian was at the very beginning of Parkinson's and his body was stiffening up.
So who is
And
Ian for our listeners?
oh, of course, thank you, Pearl. Ian was my husband, may he rest in peace. But his body was starting to stiffen up. And at the time, we didn't know that he had Parkinson's, but we knew that he was struggling. So I took him to a Pilates studio that's on Fruitville, if memory serves me correctly. And we did dual classes for a couple of years, and it really did seem to help him. And then I continued on my own after he lost interest, and then it faded away. When I got ready to retire and came back to Florida, stopped the crazy traveling back and forth to the West Coast every week, I decided I had to get myself back in shape. I had the typical IT consultant belly and 30 extra pounds from sitting at a bar and having food late at night and drinking way too much wine. And so I found out that there were Pilates studios near where I live. I live here in Bradenton. And I started taking Pilates, and it was very difficult because I was very out of shape. But I managed to lose about 30 pounds and get myself back into some condition. And one day I saw a sign that said, become an instructor. And given the fact that I am a type double A, some people would say triple A personality, I said, what the heck? So I signed up, and that's how I met you.
Terrific. So one of the things you didn't share, and I'm not going to ask the number, but like me, you're on second, maybe even third act of your career in life. So you're a late starter as a Pilates instructors too, right? So did you
Oh,
have,
yeah.
what was it that, did you have any of those misgivings like, oh my gosh, should I really be doing this at this age? Or was it something other than that?
Oh, misgivings. Please. That instructor training was probably one of the hardest things I've ever done. First of all of the instructors were in much better shape than me, for sure. And many of them were already doing stuff like Pilates or the speed bike riding and all that kind of stuff. And I was just getting back into some kind of shape, and I wasn't in any kind of good shape, really. I knew that intellectually I could do it. I could do the courses and the anatomy course and all that kind of stuff. That's a piece of cake. That's like when I learned to fly a plane. Who would have ever thought that I would fly an airplane? But I decided to do that one time when I was dating somebody who had a plane. So here I was taking Pilates classes, and why not? Of course, Susan would become an instructor. But it was the hardest experience, physical experience, I think I've ever done. To try and keep up with you guys was tough. I am considerably older than most of the instructors I know. But at this point in my life, now 6 years later, I'm an avid Pilates instructor and student, and I'm in the best shape of my life. I mean, you know me, but when people meet me, they no more think I am the age I am than the man in the moon. So, it just happened, as many things in my life just happen.
Well, I also know that a lot of things have occurred over the last 6 years, and I feel like your connection to Pilates really supported you through those. And maybe you can share some of the things that have gone on and how Pilates maybe provided you a moral support or motivation, or was the why behind the way you did things.
It's really a good question, and that's a really good point. As I alluded to, my husband was in fact diagnosed with Parkinson's and then eventually with Lewy body dementia. So the last 4 years of his life was extraordinarily difficult. He died 2 years ago. And I think the best way to describe Pilates for me over the course of that, in addition to that, my mother passed away a couple of years ago. So I had to live through both of those. I think Pilates was my sanctuary. I could come into the studio and just get into the mindset of Pilates and relax and work hard. And it was all about just me in that moment, which gave me a break from the extreme tension and anxiety of being a full-time caregiver for both my mother and my husband. So I think Pilates did a lot to keep me sane.
For caregivers too, in connection to Pilates during those years?
You have a great memory. Yes, I did actually. When I was participating in a caregiver group at Parkinson's place, which was one of the only things that kept me sane because it was a group of people, all of whom were taking care of Parkinson's patients. I realized that these women were just, most of them were women, interestingly enough, were so out of shape and so stressed, and their bodies were like, they'd sit in chairs during these caregiver meetings and they would just like, they were in pain. I mean, everything was aching. So I offered to provide Pilates, mat Pilates, after each caregiver group. And in fact, did that for, I don't remember, I think there were like 8 women who participated in it. And we were pretty religious until, until COVID hit. But it was great. It was great for them. And I felt like I was giving back to Parkinson's Place for their support of me through this really difficult time, particularly Parkinson's with dementia is really difficult to deal with. But yeah, like being a social service human being and ending up fostering 15 children. That's Susan. Teaching Pilates to caregiver groups because you think they need it. That's Susan. That's just the
No,
way
I,
I
I
am.
think I think it's absolutely fantastic. And I know that's been a little while. How is Pilates blossoming in how is Pilates blossoming in your life now? Your husband's gone, things have moved on. Where are you with your motivation for, with, and to Pilates?
It's a really interesting question also. I'm still teaching. I teach 3 days a week to a small group of women in my Pilates studio in my own home. And it's been 5 years that this group is together, and they are just religious. Every Monday, Wednesday, and Saturday morning, we meet and we do some very serious Pilates. So that keeps me motivated from the instructional perspective. And also because I know these women so well, I do a lot of the class with them. I do a lot of observing also, of course, because if you don't, they cheat. But but it's become such a habit to have my body be in the condition that it's in that I go to an additional at least 4 classes a week of my own Pilates experience. So if you add that all up, it's 7 encounters with Pilates a week,
Wow.
which sometimes is pretty hard to find the time to do that because I'm also very much involved in the community and various organizations, and I'm working full-time volunteering on all this other stuff in the community. So my schedule is a bit crazy, but that's
But
me.
that's sometimes that's what Pilates does is it gives you the drive and the motivation and the strength to do all those things. So we're just about winding to the end here. Just a couple fun questions. What is your favorite Pilates exercise and why?
I think what I like best is the series of 5 because you can do the series of 5 in so many different ways. I mean, some instructors, myself included, adds a plank in between each one. That, hypes up the challenge. It's so much ab work. It just fires up the abs. It gets your body in control. It doesn't really matter to me whether it's at the beginning of a class or the end of a class, although sometimes when it's the end of a class, particularly when some instructors do it on top of a box at the end of a class, you feel like you just don't have enough energy to complete it.
So that
But
sounds like it almost could be your least favorite too, depending on what part of
could,
class you're in, right?
it could be. I never will forget the first time I was in the studio and an instructor said, now go across the reformer and bring your legs up to tabletop. We're going to do the series of 5 this way. I thought I was going to die getting through it. I just didn't have the ab strength. And now, of course, it's pretty much routine, which is great. I mean, I feel great about it. On the flip side, the thing I hate most, I hate bridges. I hate bridging. I hate it.
And
And
why?
I think I hate it for a couple of reasons. One, I have to be so careful because I do have osteopenia and I can't articulate up and articulate down too much. I have to be really careful. I can hear my spine cracking some of the
Ooh.
times when we do that. And I have really tight hamstrings, particularly my left leg. So it's, sometimes it's like, especially when, when we're in tight tension and we're doing single leg
Mm.
bridges, it's like, yeah.
Oh gosh. So I'm going to end with asking you if you have any advice or insights about Pilates that you want to share with our listeners, whether it's towards the instructor or towards the practitioner or just any person in general. What kind of advice or insight would you like to share?
I think Pilates is a practice that is incredibly important to mind and body. And I think when people say, "Oh, I can't exercise, I can't do yoga, I can't follow all those postures," I think Pilates is worth a try because Pilates is different. Pilates is individualized from the perspective of you can modify to your own body, you can build the length and strength in those muscles. It's not like you have to be perfect from the beginning, and you build your own personal expertise. And once you really get into it, it's just something that's very special. It's just special time to be with yourself, experience your body, strengthen your body, feel so healthy. Because, the longevity in my family is a little ridiculous. My father just turned 99 and his mother lived to 101. So I may be old, but I got a lot of years left that I got to deal with. And I want to deal with them in the best possible shape I can be in.
That's super. I love that. Well, Susan, thank you for sharing with us. I love your story. I mean, again, we've been friends for 6 years, so obviously I love you, but it was great hearing some things that I didn't know and having you remind me about a few that I kind of remembered a little piece of. But thank you again and keep it up.
Thanks, Pearl. This was fun. I enjoyed doing it with you.
We hope you enjoyed this episode and thank you for tuning in. For more information, you can find us on Facebook and Instagram at Pilates is the Answer and on the web at pilatesistheanswer.com.
Feel free to message us with questions for which you are searching the answer. We would love for you to follow our podcast, leave a kind review, and lots of stars.